Bronson, you there, dude?
I'm here.
Hey, Bronson Irwin. Coming a little hot. Bronson Irwin. I've talked with him once before. I had so much fun. I asked him to come on after the spring game to talk a bit of not just OU football, but in particular the offensive line. Bronson, is there any reason to be alarmed by the offensive line play on Friday?
I'm going to say no. I think we're at a point as fans of this great team that the expectations from last year have set a bar really high. So I think this is probably more typical as far as what you're used to seeing when it comes to offensive line come around the end of spring football. So I don't think it's time to panic. I don't think that it's time to start wondering how we're going to fix this issue and what JUCO guys we're going to bring in the summer to make that happen. I think the guys are here that are going to be able to make an impact this fall. And you've also got to keep in mind that during the spring game format, you've got guys playing on different sides of the football. You've got two teams. Sometimes that cohesive 5-man unit that would normally be working together is broken up, and you got guys that were playing tackle, playing guard, and vice versa, and just trying to make it work for the format of this game. So obviously, it's definitely not what we saw last year with the caliber of players that we had, but we're at a position where like we always do, we have to reload and find those next 5 guys.
Well, to that point, with the guys moving around playing different positions, like watching Bray Walker play guard just kind of sent me into a kind of a tizzy. And I understand that that's not necessarily that kid's makeup and probably not where he's going to end up playing in the fall. But just judging on what you saw from the guys in the way that they played the positions and the way that their individual technique was, who stood out to you, if anybody did at all?
That's a good question. I think, Bray is a guy that I myself was surprised was down there at the guard position. I think there's some guys that definitely physically look the part. I wouldn't say that anybody really made a strong case or differentiated themselves. And again, this is a scrimmage. You're playing against these guys you go against every day. There's quick whistles. They're not tackling people necessarily. Hopefully that's by design, this scrimmage. But it's a little bit of a different environment. You don't see all of the violence that you would typically see in a regular game because, again, it is a competition, it is a game. But that guy across from you, you got to have him come August to field the team and field the best team that you can going into that first game. So I don't put a whole lot of stock in necessarily this isn't so much less physical than we're used to seeing. I just think it's kind of the natural progression of the offensive line unit at this point in the year.
Okay, so over under on cuss words from Bedenbaugh during the game. I'm gonna set it at 23.
Oh, I'd double that and still take the over. And then you go to the film session. If you're doing an hour and a half of film, you probably put the over under it. Yeah, I don't know, 150, something like that. No, I mean he has high expectations, and I think that's exactly what you want. If there's anybody that can come in and get these guys prepared for college football and play the game the right way, it's him. So, they're in a good spot, and I think that, like I said before, I think a lot of this concern comes from potentially the fact that we maybe are a little bit spoiled based on what we're used to here again the last year, 2 years.
So knowing that we're a little bit spoiled based on what we're used to, I think that's been a storyline that's played out with the quarterbacks. Everybody's like, Baker should never be as good as he was, and given what the circumstances for which he ended up at OU, even the circumstances for which he ended at Texas Tech, he was not highly regarded, so forth and so on. Kyler Murray was supposed to be damaged goods after his year at A&M, and then he ends up winning a Heisman Trophy. And with the offensive line, it feels like they're not supposed to be very good for the past couple of years, honestly. And you make a guy like Cody Ford a right tackle after he had never played the position as a starter or even really as a backup. And he's he's invited to the NFL draft this weekend. So Bill knows what he's doing there. But I take your point in that a lot of these guys are redshirt freshmen and freshmen. They're not necessarily upperclassmen. And I wondered about that because you're bringing in a a grad transfer in R.J. Proctor, who played left guard at Virginia and figures to play left or right guard at OU. But outside of that, your elder statesman is Creed Humphrey. And I'm looking at the offensive line, I'm looking at the depth chart, and I'm looking at what we saw out there. Where do you think the quote-unquote senior leadership is going to come from for this group?
I think that's kind of a unique situation in this scenario where there isn't a lot of guys that have a tremendous amount of experience. You mentioned the guy transferring for Virginia. I think he could definitely come in and help. But again, he's not used to this system. He's not going to be. I would guess to say that he's probably not going to be used to being coached by somebody like Bill. But you don't have to be a senior to lead, in my opinion. You don't have to be, a guy that's been there 4 or 5 years to be able to step up and tell people to do the right things and try to guide people down the right direction, so long as you're doing things the right way yourself. And I think that there's going to be some guys that fall into that category. Creed Humphrey, obviously, is a great player. He's got a year under his belt working with some guys. So much like our expectations are high, you think his expectations are going to be high going into this year. I played with a guy to my right and a guy to my left that both got drafted, and then the guys outside of them also got drafted. I have high expectations for you as well. So he's kind of like he's gonna have to kind of assume that that coach on the field type of role. I know that's probably a played out cliche at this point, but being the center, the guy identifying the mic points, making the calls, he's going to have to assume that role both on the field and off the field. And looking at the roster, they've got Swinson, who's a redshirt junior, and that's about it. I noticed they have a kid on the roster, Bryce Roberts, and he actually went to my high school.
Transferred in this spring.
Transferred from New Mexico State. Right. This is a kid that I remember talking to when he was in high school, saying, "Look, you need to put on some weight and learn how to go backwards, learn how to pass that, learn how to be a guy on the offensive line." And he didn't want to hear that. He wanted to go. He wanted to go play tight end at New Mexico State, and here we are. It's kind of funny how things come full circle like that. But a very athletic guy, not going to be a 330-pound guy, but put a little weight on him, put a little strength on him. You never know. He might be able to come out there and swing around and maybe come in as an extra offensive lineman in a short yardage shed or something of that nature. But sometimes when you've got these kinds of situations, you can get creative and allow guys to help you with their skill set, and sometimes that means moving guys around. And I think there's some flexibility that could play to our advantage as well. There's not this is the right guard, this is the right tackle. You got guys that are used to playing multiple positions, backing up different guys, filling in where they need to. So they're going to have all summer and fall camp to obviously kind of solidify where they need to be, but guys have to move around. That's just the reality of the position.